The bass thudded through the walls of the packed house party as Jake leaned over the kitchen counter, pouring whiskey into 2 red cups. "To the weekend," he grinned, handing one to a woman with striking eyes and a teasing smirk. She laughed, her hand brushing against his. "You always toast like that?" she asked. "Only when the company's this good," he shot back, his voice low, confident. They disappeared upstairs not long after, the laughter from below fading, as the door clicked shut. "Man, you didn't even ask her name?" Brandon asked the next morning, smirking across the table as they sat in their regular breakfast spot. "What for?" Jake replied, biting into a bacon sandwich. "It's not like I'm marrying her." The group chuckled. "You're gonna catch feelings one day, bro," Brandon warned. Jake laughed, tossing his empty coffee cup into the trash. "Only thing I'm catching is sleep. I'm good." Hours earlier, he'd slipped out of a quiet hotel room. He buttoned, his shirt in front of the mirror, hair still messy from the night before. The woman lay under white sheets, back turned, unmoving. He didn't say goodbye, didn't even glance twice. By the time the elevator dinged at the lobby, he was already checking messages, wiping lipstick off his collar with a napkin. Back at the office, Jake strolled in late with a coffee in hand. "Look who finally decided to show up," quipped Mia from accounting as she passed him in the hallway. "Late? Nah," Jake said, smirking. "I'm fashionably unpredictable." Laughter followed him as he entered the open-plan workspace. He dropped into his chair, tossed his jacket onto the desk, and spun around to face the intern. "Guess who had a good night?" he said, nudging him with his foot. The kid just looked confused. Jake was halfway through reenacting a very classy exit when a firm voice called out over the speakers, "All staff to conference room B now." Groans and scattered chatter followed, but Jake was already up, still riding the high from the night before. He walked in last, leaned against the back wall, and crossed his arms as the owner, Mr. Fields, took the floor. "Big changes, everyone," Mr. Fields announced. "Starting today, we'll be welcoming a new CEO. She's got experience, vision, and—" The door opened. Every head turned. Jake's stomach flipped. She walked in like she owned the air itself. Slate gray suit, hair in a tight bun, eyes sharp. She paused briefly, scanning the room, and then she saw him. Her expression didn't change. No flicker, no smirk, nothing. Jake's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Mr. Fields beamed. "Everyone, this is Danielle Monroe." Danielle stepped forward, heels clicking with precision. "Thank you, Mr. Fields. I'm excited to be here," she said smoothly. Her voice was calm but carried weight. Authority. Control. Jake couldn't look away. She didn't look like the woman from last night anymore. Not under the dim lights of a bedroom, not with messy hair or smudged lipstick. She looked like a woman who could fire him with a sentence. She continued speaking, outlining expectations, goals, targets. Jake didn't hear most of it. His brain was stuck on one image, her face on the pillow, now standing in front of his entire office, wearing power like a second skin. His hand tightened around the chair's backrest. When the meeting ended, people clapped politely. Danielle nodded once, thanked them, and walked out with Mr. Fields. Jake remained still, watching the door slowly close behind her. No one else seemed to notice the silent exchange, or the fact that their new CEO had just spent the night with one of her subordinates. He stayed behind for a moment, trying to replay their conversation from the night before. Had he said anything stupid? Treated her like another one-night story? Probably. That was the problem with not remembering names. Or faces, clearly. His heart beat faster than it should have. Not out of attraction, out of panic. Brandon walked up, nudging him. "Dude, you good?" Jake blinked. "Yeah, fine." He tried to walk off but tripped slightly over a chair leg. Brandon chuckled. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Jake didn't reply. In his office, Jake sat down heavily, shutting the blinds. Halfway, he leaned forward, elbows on knees, and exhaled. This was going to be a problem. A big one. Danielle stood at the front of the conference room the next morning, poised as ever, running through quarterly goals and restructuring plans with sharp clarity. Her voice was measured, each word deliberate. Jake sat at the back, pretending to scroll on his tablet, but his eyes kept drifting toward her. She didn't so much as glance his way. Not once. It was like he didn't exist. Or worse, like he was beneath notice. Everyone else listened attentively, even the senior staff. It was clear she had their respect already. After the meeting, small groups huddled around coffee machines and hallway corners, buzzing with whispers. She used to run Lennox and Hall's West Coast division, right? I heard she doubled their growth in under 2 years. She's loaded, man, has shares in 4 major firms. And young, too. That's what's scary. Jake caught pieces of conversation as he passed, each one chipping away at his confidence. He hadn't just slept with some woman at a party. He'd slept with a powerhouse. He waited until just before lunch, hovering outside her office like it was casual. When she finally stepped out with a folder in hand, he leaned in with his usual grin. "Hey, stranger." Danielle looked up. Her expression didn't change. "Jake?" she acknowledged, cool and controlled. "You settling in okay?" he asked, keeping his tone light. "Anything you need?" She raised an eyebrow as if measuring him. "Everything I need I already brought with me." Then she turned, heading back toward the executive wing. He stood there, lips pressed together. She hadn't even blinked. An hour later, her assistant popped into the creative lounge. "Jake, Ms. Monroe would like to see you in her office, now." Jake straightened his shirt, grabbed his laptop, and made his way down the hallway, suddenly aware of how loud his footsteps sounded on the hardwood floor. When he walked in, Danielle was already seated, reviewing papers. He stood awkwardly. "You wanted to see me?" She motioned to the chair across from her without looking up. "Sit." He did. She continued flipping through the pages, then finally set them down and locked eyes with him. "Let's talk about your recent performance." Jake opened his mouth, but she held up a finger. "I've reviewed your campaigns for the last 6 months. There's a pattern. Clever ideas, poor execution. Inconsistent timelines. Over-reliance on recycled pitches." He blinked. "Look, this isn't personal," she cut in. "This is about results. If your name weren't already on the payroll, I'd assume your portfolio belonged to a mid-level freelancer." The room went quiet. Jake cleared his throat, trying to recover. "All right, ouch, got it. Brutal honesty. I respect that." Danielle leaned back, arms crossed. "Do you?" He gave her a crooked smile. "You didn't seem to mind me 6 nights ago." For the first time, her expression shifted. Not surprise, not anger, just a slight tilt of the head. "You're right," she said calmly. "I didn't mind, but that was Saturday. This is business. You work for me now." Jake's smile faltered. "I'm giving you a new assignment," she said, sliding a file across the desk. "The Bristol campaign." He frowned. "Wait, that's the one you were going to give to creative lead, right?" "Was," she said. "Now it's yours. Deadline's Monday morning. Client wants 5 concepts, full brand voice, digital mock-ups, and a pitch deck." His eyes widened. "That's 4 days." 3.5, she corrected. "I want your first concept by tomorrow noon." Jake flipped through the folder. It was a massive undertaking, one that usually had a full team. "This is a setup," he muttered before he could stop himself. Danielle didn't react. "It's an opportunity. Show me you can deliver." He stood up, folder still in hand. "And if I don't? Then I'll know exactly where you stand, in this company." Their eyes met again. The silence thick, charged, but not romantic. Competitive. Uneven. Jake turned without another word, and walked out, pulse racing. Co-workers glanced up as he passed, sensing the shift. He went straight to his desk, opened the file, and stared at the pages. Logos, briefs, market breakdowns. It was doable, barely. But it would mean giving up his weekend, staying late, and maybe even failing. He didn't like being tested, especially not by someone who knew what he looked like shirtless. Later that day, he overheard two junior designers whispering in the break room. She gave him the Bristol account? Yep. Savage move. Isn't that the guy from, the party stories? Jake walked past them without acknowledging, heat rising up his neck. The rumors were already spreading, and somehow she was still ahead of him. Back at his desk, he started sketching rough ideas. For once, no jokes, no flirting, just focus. Because whether it was a challenge or a punishment, one thing was now clear. Danielle wasn't here to play. Jake barely left the office that weekend. His desk was buried in mock-ups, half-written taglines, and coffee-stained notes. The once lively hum of creative chatter around him was replaced by the low buzz of late-night printers and the flicker of overhead lights. He stopped shaving. Barely. Slept. Every time he looked at the Bristol folder, it seemed heavier. 3 missed calls from friends, 2 ignored texts from weekend flings. He didn't have time. Not now. Not with Danielle watching. By Monday morning, he dragged himself into the boardroom with a tired grin and a pitch deck in hand. It's not perfect, he warned, before she even sat, but it's a start. Danielle gave no reply. She just nodded at the client, motioned for him to begin, and crossed her arms. Jake launched into his presentation, voice smooth, timing practiced. The slides flowed, his tone sharp. He'd stayed up tweaking every detail. He even wore a tie. By the end, he exhaled and waited for a response. Danielle didn't look at him. She looked at the client. "What are your thoughts?" she asked. The client hesitated. "Well, it's fine, but we've seen similar things before. We were hoping for something fresher, bolder." Danielle nodded, still calm. Then she turned to Jake. "This isn't what we discussed. It feels generic." Jake's stomach sank. "I stayed up. I'm not questioning your effort," she said firmly. "I'm questioning the result." The room went silent. "I'll assign someone else to refine the direction." "Thanks, Jake." That was it. He didn't get a chance to explain. Just a quiet dismissal in front of executives, clients, and co-workers. He gathered his laptop slowly, trying to keep his hands from shaking. People avoided eye contact as he walked out. Back at his desk, the silence was louder. One of the interns brought him coffee. "Rough meeting, huh?" Jake gave a tight smile. "You could say that." His jaw clenched, not because she'd embarrassed him, because she was right. The next few days blurred. Long hours, quick lunches, constant pressure. Danielle's standards were brutal but consistent. Everyone knew it. She didn't play favorites. She didn't crack under pressure. She didn't flirt. And she didn't explain herself twice. Co-workers who used to laugh at Jake's stories now kept their heads down. Fewer people invited him to drinks after work. Even Brandon had started avoiding casual jokes around her. "She's not here to play," he told Jake during a smoke break. "You might want to start acting like she's not the same woman you knew." Jake didn't respond. He just stared at the traffic below, wondering when his world had shifted. The pressure built steadily. There were days he barely left his chair, eyes red from screen glare. Every interaction with Danielle was precise. No small talk, no eye contact longer than necessary. She gave feedback like a surgeon. Quick, cold, and clean. Somewhere between the rejected pitch and the back-to-back edits, Jake started thinking less about what she did to him, and more about what she was doing for the company. One night, past midnight, Jake found himself standing in the break room, staring at the coffee pot. The cleaning crew shuffled in and out, ignoring him. His reflection in the microwave looked older somehow. He thought about the woman from that hotel bed, how effortless she seemed. He thought about the Danielle from the boardroom, how calculated and commanding she'd become. And for the first time he realized maybe they were never different. Maybe he just hadn't looked close enough. He remembered the way he used to walk through this place. Loud, cocky, untouchable. The way women laughed at his jokes, how interns rushed to impress him. He remembered Danielle's voice that morning in the meeting. The way she didn't even raise her tone when she cut him down. No ego, just facts. The humiliation hadn't come from spite. It had come from standards that hit harder than any insult. The next morning Jake came in early. Earlier than he ever had. No jokes, no banter. He sat with the junior team reviewing layouts, asking for feedback instead of giving it. He stayed through lunch, skipped drinks, rewrote his concepts. Quietly. Relentlessly. People noticed. Whispers shifted. "Jake's on a mission," someone said. "Maybe he's finally growing up." Danielle didn't say anything, but she didn't need to. One afternoon she passed by his desk and paused. "You're revising the third campaign layout?" she asked. He nodded. Client liked the new direction, thought it felt more personal. She gave a short nod. Good. That was it. But it stayed with him the rest of the day. He wasn't sure what was worse, the cold shoulder or the faint trace of approval, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he preferred the latter. Jake's routine had transformed completely. Gone were the long coffee breaks, the half-hearted meetings, the lazy edits. His desk became a permanent fixture of energy drinks, draft sketches, and crumpled post-it notes. He didn't wait for feedback anymore. He sought it out. He rewrote headlines 3 times before submitting. He began asking questions in meetings. Real questions. Danielle noticed, though she never said much. A subtle nod when he spoke up. A quiet, good work when he handed in a revised campaign. Small gestures, but coming from her, they landed like thunder. He wasn't chasing approval anymore. He was chasing excellence. Nights blurred into mornings. The janitor started greeting him like a coworker. On Friday evening, when most desks were empty and the office lights dimmed automatically, Jake was still there, headphones in, fine-tuning layouts. At 9:30, he heard the elevator ding. Danielle stepped out, heels echoing through the quiet floor, holding a folder and a reusable coffee cup. "I thought you'd gone home hours ago," she said, walking past him. "I thought you didn't believe in sleep," Jake replied without looking up. She smirked slightly. "Touché." She entered the glass conference room and began arranging documents. After a moment, Jake stood, stretched his back, and walked over. He knocked once on the open door. "Need a second pair of eyes?" She glanced up. "Sure." They sat across from each other under the soft hum of the overhead lights, reviewing a set of mood boards and color palettes. They didn't speak much. At first. Professional. Efficient. But the silence between them didn't carry the old tension anymore. Something had shifted. Jake leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "You ever get used to this pace?" Danielle glanced sideways. "You don't. You adapt." He chuckled. "Yeah, that sounds about right." Another pause. Then he looked at her, serious. "Now, can I say something?" She didn't answer, but she didn't stop him either. "I was out of line. Back when you first showed up. The way I handled things, the way I treated you. It was careless. I didn't even remember your name that morning. That's on me." Danielle set her pen down. Her expression didn't soften, but it wasn't hard either. She seemed to be weighing his words. "I wasn't trying to get anything from you when I showed up at your office," he continued. "At least, I don't think I was. Maybe part of me hoped you'd forget it ever happened, or that it didn't matter. But clearly it did. And I get it now." She looked at him for a long moment. Then, "I knew who you were at the party." Jake blinked. "What?" "I knew," she repeated. "You were loud, flirting with everyone. I'd heard your name before through agency circles. When you approached me, I chose not to say anything. I wanted one night where I didn't have to be Danielle Monroe, future CEO. Just someone anonymous for once." Jake stared at her, stunned. "I never thought I'd see you again," she added. "But I wasn't surprised when I did." He swallowed. "Then why didn't you—" "Because it wasn't relevant," she cut in. "I was here to lead, not settle old scores." He nodded slowly. "Still, I needed to hear that." Her gaze held steady. "And I needed to see if you could grow." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It felt earned. She gathered the folders, stacked them neatly, and stood. "You've come a long way. Don't stop now." He didn't reply, just nodded. As she walked out, Jake looked around the empty room. Something felt lighter, not resolved, but understood. And that was enough. The pitch meeting for the Bristol campaign came on a Monday morning, sharp and early. Jake stood at the head of the sleek conference table, tie neatly knotted, slides prepped, voice steady. The clients, a panel of sharp-eyed executives, leaned in with interest as he spoke. His presentation was precise, bold, human. He didn't try to oversell. He let the work speak. By the end, one of the senior clients smiled, leaned back, and said, "That's exactly what we've been looking for." Danielle, seated off to the side, didn't say much during the meeting, but her silence this time carried a weight of approval. By the afternoon, word had spread through the building. Jake's campaign had not only been approved, it had been praised. In the team debrief, Danielle stood at the front and for the first time in public said, "This is the kind of work that elevates us." Jake delivered, and that sets the bar. It wasn't dramatic. No applause followed, but it meant everything, because it came from her. The next day, HR called him in for a quick meeting. A new position had opened, project lead for a multi-brand merger. Fast-paced, high stakes. The kind of challenge that didn't come with a safety net. Jake didn't ask who recommended him. He already knew. That night he walked down a quiet hallway in a familiar hotel, room 214. The hallway hadn't changed, the carpet still thick, the lighting still soft and golden. He slid the key card through the lock, and the door opened with a click. The room looked exactly the same. Neatly made bed, crisp sheets, a chair in the corner, a mirror near the bathroom door. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him, letting the silence stretch. He sat on the edge of the bed, hands resting on his knees. No one else was there. No music, no distraction. Just memory. He looked toward the mirror. His reflection looked tired but focused. Less reckless, more real. He stood slowly and walked toward it, staring at his own eyes. No smug grin, no empty charm. Just a quiet man who'd come a long way in a short time. The next morning, he was back in the office, earlier than most. His desk was already cleared of clutter, a fresh project brief resting neatly on top. A knock on the glass caught his attention. Danielle's assistant stood there. "She'd like to see you." Jake walked to her office with calm steps. Danielle was standing near the window, arms folded, watching the city skyline. She didn't turn around immediately. "You asked for me?" he said, his voice steady. She nodded, still facing the glass. "Yes, I wanted to talk before things get too busy." He stepped inside. She turned and looked at him. This time, no tension. Just two professionals, face to face. "You've earned the lead on the new merger," she said plainly. "That wasn't handed to you. It was earned." "I appreciate it," he replied. "I need someone who can keep up, not just with the pace, but with the pressure. You've shown me you can." He didn't smile. He just nodded. She walked back to her desk, picked up a file, then set it down again without opening it. There's no room for complacency. Not in this seat. Not in this field. I know, he said. Danielle looked at him directly. This is your shot, Jake. Don't waste it. There was no double meaning in her voice. No subtext. Just words that mattered. He gave her a single nod. I won't. She returned the nod, then turned back toward her window. The meeting was over. Jake left the office without another word, walking down the hall with even steps. The bullpen was full of chatter, keyboards clacking, phones ringing. The usual noise. But he moved through it like something had settled inside him. No swagger, no show, just certainty. As he passed the glass wall of her office, Danielle stood watching, arms folded, composed, still. She didn't smile. She didn't move. But she watched. And that was enough.